The sun dipped low over Lithuria's crystal towers, painting the sky in colors no human had names for. Curran stood at the edge of the governorate palace, his boots crunching softly against the smooth, glass-like walkway. He had never seen a world like this. The towers shimmered, reflecting every shade of blue and green in the air. Strange floating gardens hovered between the buildings, their plants glowing faintly, and alien birds, shapes he could not quite describe, flitted through the sky. Curran had traveled far to reach this place. He had been a scholar back on Earth, studying human ingenuity and ways of thinking. His work had been considered exceptional, and somehow that had drawn attention from beings far beyond his understanding. Now he had been chosen, not as a diplomat, not as a soldier, but as a teacher, a human in a palace of aliens, expected to pass on knowledge, wisdom, and methods of problem-solving to 5 alien daughters of the governor. The palace gates opened before him, enormous structures of translucent crystal that sang softly when touched. Curran hesitated, taking in the scent of the air, sweet, earthy, but also strange, almost metallic. His heart beat fast. He was not afraid. He was curious, and curiosity had carried him this far. Inside, the halls were quiet. The walls pulsed faintly, as if the building itself were alive. The floors were smooth but seemed to hum under his steps. Statues of previous governors, sleek and elegant, lined the corridors, their eyes set with luminous stones. And then he saw her. Governor Zyra was unlike anything he had imagined. Tall, graceful, with skin that shimmered softly in the dim light, she stood at the far end of the hall, her eyes bright and intelligent. She was quiet but commanding, every movement deliberate, every word measured. Curran bowed instinctively, unsure if it was expected in this culture, but Zyra merely nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. "You must be Curran," she said. Her voice was melodic, flowing over him in a way that made him feel calm yet aware of every movement. "We have heard of your talents. I hope I can help," Curran replied, finding his voice steady despite the awe swelling inside him. "I will do my best." "You will do more than your best," Zyra said softly. "You will teach my daughters the way humans think. We wish for them to learn your ingenuity, your creativity, and your courage. Our ways are precise, disciplined. Yours are different, valuable." Curran swallowed. He had not expected responsibility like this. He had come thinking he might observe, maybe give lectures or lessons in theory. But to mentor 5 alien daughters, teach them to think differently in ways their own culture might not approve, it was a challenge he had never imagined. And yet, he felt a spark of excitement. The governor led him to a vast room filled with light and floating panels. 5 young aliens waited there, each one unique. One had wings that shimmered like thin glass, another had eyes that reflected multiple colors, another moved with a grace that seemed almost liquid. They looked at him curiously, some with interest, some with skepticism. Curran smiled gently and took a deep breath. "Hello," he said. "My name is Curran. I am here to help you learn new ways to solve problems, to think creatively, and to explore ideas together. We will work together, and I hope we can learn from each other as well." The daughters exchanged glances, and one stepped forward. "We are not like humans," she said, her voice steady. "Can you understand us?" "I will try," Curran said honestly. "And you will help me understand you. That is how learning works, by sharing and listening." Zyra watched silently, nodding slightly. She did not need to speak. Her presence alone made it clear that Curran's time here was serious, important. The first lesson began with a simple exercise. Curran led them to a space filled with small mechanical puzzles, strange shapes and devices designed to test creativity rather than strength. Humans often approached problems from angles aliens did not consider, he explained, and that was the skill he hoped to share. At first, the daughters struggled. Their minds were trained in the precision of their culture, rules, repetition, exact outcomes. They tried to solve the puzzles as they would any formal task, following steps they were taught since childhood. But the puzzles did not yield easily. Curran smiled. "Try thinking differently," he suggested. "What if the goal is not the same as it appears? What if there is more than one solution?" The room fell silent. Then slowly one daughter touched a piece differently, twisting it in a way Curran had not expected. A click, a small light, and the puzzle shifted into completion. The others gasped in surprise, eyes wide. "You see," Curran said, his tone gentle but encouraging, "your creativity is not bound by rules. Rules are guides, not walls. Humans often make mistakes, but we learn from them. Sometimes mistakes are the first step to understanding something new." The daughters experimented, laughter and curiosity beginning to fill the room. They asked questions, suggested ideas, and tried things that no one had taught them. Curran encouraged every attempt, every thought. The governor watched, her expression softening. As the day turned into night, Curran reflected on the challenge ahead. Teaching the daughters was more than showing them puzzles or exercises. It was teaching them confidence in themselves, the courage to explore ideas beyond what was comfortable. Humans thrived on imperfection, on trying, failing, and trying again. He had to show that to these young aliens, and somehow, he had to convince them that it was not dangerous to step beyond their norms. That night, as Curran rested in a small guest chamber, he thought about how strange and wonderful this world was. The palace seemed alive, humming softly, as if it were listening. Outside, the glowing plants of the floating gardens pulsed gently in the dark. Somewhere in the distance, alien birds sang songs that sounded like wind chimes and water flowing at the same time. He wondered about the daughters. They were brilliant, intelligent, and curious, yet so confined by expectation. He could see the spark of human ingenuity in them, the ability to think beyond the obvious, but it was buried beneath generations of tradition. His task was daunting, but Curran felt a thrill he had never known. He was not a ruler. He was not a warrior. But he could be the bridge, the teacher who opened their minds to possibilities beyond what even their culture had imagined. Morning came with light spilling through crystal windows, painting the room in every shade of green and blue. Curran stood at the entrance to the teaching chamber awaiting the daughters. One by one they arrived, still shy, still cautious. But their eyes carried something new, a glimmer of curiosity he had planted the day before. "Good morning," Curran said simply. "Today, we will try something different. We will explore problems that do not have one answer. We will explore questions that might not have solutions at all. And we will see what humans and you can do when we think together." The daughters looked at him, intrigued and slightly uncertain. Curran knew that earning their trust would take time, but already the air was different. Ideas moved like a current through the room. Questions floated unspoken, curiosity sparked, and the walls of tradition seemed to bend slightly, allowing something new to enter. By the end of the day, small successes had been achieved. The daughters began to see patterns differently, tried new approaches, and even made mistakes willingly. Curran's heart swelled with quiet pride. He could feel the potential in them. They were ready to grow in ways no one, perhaps not even the governor herself, had anticipated. As the sun set over Lithuria once more, Curran stood with Zyra on a balcony overlooking the city. "They are remarkable," he said. Zyra nodded, her gaze distant yet approving. "Yes, and you have begun to show them something rare. Keep guiding them, Curran. The world will need their minds to be free, just as your own is." Curran felt a surge of purpose. This was only the beginning. Tomorrow, the real lessons would begin, the challenges would grow, and he would continue to guide these young minds toward a future where human ingenuity and alien wisdom could meet. And in that, he knew, something extraordinary would be born. The city below shimmered, alive with possibilities. Curran smiled. He was no longer just a visitor, he was a teacher. And in this moment, the possibilities seemed endless. The next morning, Sunlight spilled across the palace halls like liquid gold, warming the crystal floors and casting a soft glow on every surface. Curran walked through the corridors, listening to the hum of the palace and the distant whispers of the floating gardens outside. Today, he would push the daughters further, helping them see not only new ideas but the value of thinking independently. When he entered the teaching chamber, the daughters were already there, standing in a line, eyes bright with anticipation. They had practiced what he taught the day before, experimenting with their puzzles and strategies in private, and their curiosity was obvious. Curran smiled. "Good morning," he said. "Today, we will do something more challenging. We will take what you learned and apply it to problems that have no clear answers. These are the problems humans face every day. There is no one right way to solve them, and sometimes the solution comes from cooperation, observation, and creativity combined." The daughters tilted their heads. One of them, the youngest, spoke first. "No clear answers, but we are taught that precision is important." "How can there be solutions that are not exact?" Curran shook his head gently. "Not every problem in life is precise. Humans often face uncertainty. We learn to navigate it. We use imagination, reasoning, and courage. You will learn to do the same." He led them to a section of the chamber filled with moving objects, strange, shifting constructs that changed shape and position every few moments. "These represent challenges that are constantly changing," Curran explained. "You will need to observe, predict, and experiment. Mistakes are part of learning. Do not fear them." At first, the daughters hesitated. They were used to following rules, repeating steps, and achieving expected outcomes. But as Curran encouraged them, they began to take risks. One twisted a construct in a way that made it collapse, but instead of being embarrassed, she laughed. Another suggested combining two shapes that had never been combined before, and a small, unexpected pattern emerged. "You see," Curran said, his voice warm. "Mistakes often teach more than success. Humans call it learning. It is the same for all intelligent beings." For hours, they experimented. The daughters' confidence grew with every attempt. Curran observed them carefully, noting their thought patterns and guiding them gently. They were beginning to think in ways their culture had not emphasized: flexible, adaptive, curious, and brave. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Curran paused and asked, "Now let us try something different. A challenge that requires not just thinking, but understanding each other and working together." He led the daughters to a large, open area. Suspended in the middle were glowing orbs that shifted unpredictably, changing in color and size. "Each orb represents a problem," Curran explained. "Some will move slowly, some quickly. Some will require careful planning, others intuition. Your task is to arrange them in a way that achieves balance without harming any orb. You will need to communicate and coordinate." The daughters exchanged uncertain glances. Coordinating their actions was difficult. Each had her own way of thinking, and the unpredictability of the orbs made the task even harder. At first, they moved independently, causing collisions and confusion. The youngest sighed in frustration. "This is impossible," Curran smiled gently. "Impossible is just a word. Try again together. Listen to each other. Share ideas. Trust not only yourself but your companions." Slowly, they began to cooperate. They observed patterns in the orb's movements, shared strategies, and adjusted their actions. Curran guided them subtly, encouraging creative thinking and communication. By the end of the exercise, the orbs glowed steadily, balanced perfectly. The daughters looked at each other amazed. "We did it," one whispered. Curran nodded, feeling a deep satisfaction. They had not only learned about problem-solving, they had learned about trust, teamwork, and adaptation. After the exercise, Curran invited the daughters to sit and reflect. "What did you learn today?" he asked. "That rules are not always enough," said one. "That working together is stronger than working alone," added another. "That mistakes are not failures," said the youngest, her eyes shining. Curran smiled. Exactly. These are lessons humans have learned over thousands of years. Your minds are brilliant, but you are learning to see beyond what is expected. That is power, the power to create, to adapt, and to lead. Later that afternoon, Governor Zyra entered the chamber. She observed quietly as the daughters demonstrated their skills, showing off patterns they had created and strategies they had developed. Her eyes softened as she watched their confidence and independence grow. "Curran," she said when the session ended, "you have begun to show them something rare. They are learning more than I hoped, but the world beyond these walls is not as forgiving as a classroom." "Are they ready?" "They are ready to start seeing things differently," Curran replied. "But growth is gradual. They will need guidance, encouragement, and challenges that stretch them further. They are capable and they are curious. That combination is powerful." Zyra nodded. "Very well. Tomorrow, we will introduce a real challenge, one that affects more than just this palace. Let us see how they apply what they have learned when the stakes are higher." That evening, Curran walked through the palace gardens, thinking about what was to come. The daughters had potential beyond what he had imagined, but the true test would be how they applied their learning in complex, real-world situations. He knew that humans often learned best under pressure, and perhaps the daughters would too. The next day, the palace council called for a demonstration. A small section of the city's infrastructure, responsible for water distribution, had begun to fail due to unexpected growths of the native plant life. The problem was minor, but it provided a perfect opportunity to test the daughters' skills in observation, problem-solving, and leadership. Curran guided them to the site. The daughters looked at the glowing plants, puzzled by the irregular growth patterns. "Where do we start?" asked one. "Observe first," Curran said. "Do not act immediately. Notice patterns, tendencies, and behavior. Take your time to understand before making decisions." For hours, the daughters studied the plants. They noted how the growth responded to sunlight, moisture, and nearby structures. They proposed small, careful adjustments, moving water channels, trimming certain branches, and redirecting others. Curran encouraged collaboration, prompting discussion and analysis. By late afternoon, the problem was resolved. The water flowed smoothly, and the plant growth was balanced. Zyra watched proudly as the daughters explained their strategy, noting how each had contributed ideas and adapted to unforeseen complications. "You have done well," Curran said, "not because you followed instructions, but because you thought, adapted, and worked together. That is the essence of learning." Zyra approached him afterward. "They are growing faster than I imagined." "You have given them more than lessons, you have given them vision." Curran smiled, feeling the weight of his responsibility. "The vision was already within them. I am just helping them see it." As night fell, Curran returned to his quarters. The palace was quiet, but the air felt charged with possibility. The daughters had learned not only skills, but the courage to apply them. They had begun to see the value of mistakes, the power of collaboration, and the strength of independent thought. He knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, and with them, new lessons. But for the first time, he felt confident that these young minds could rise to meet whatever the future held. And in that knowledge, he found hope, not only for them, but for the possibilities of human ingenuity in worlds far beyond his own. As he looked out over the glowing gardens, Curran realized something profound. Humans were not the only ones capable of growth, but their perspective, curious, adaptable, unafraid of mistakes, could ignite brilliance in others. The daughters were proof of that, and he knew that together they could accomplish extraordinary things. The night passed quietly, but Curran's thoughts remained active, imagining challenges and exercises, observing patterns in the city, and considering how best to guide the daughters further. He understood that the greatest lessons were yet to come, and that he had only begun to see the potential in this extraordinary palace, these remarkable young minds, and the limitless possibilities of their combined intelligence. The morning sun spilled golden light across the palace of Lithuria, painting the crystal towers in warm colors. Curran stood at the edge of the teaching chamber, looking out at the city below. Today was the day the daughters would face their greatest challenge yet, a problem that could affect the entire governorate. It was a test not only of skill but of courage, leadership, and the lessons they had learned. Governor Zyra approached quietly, her presence commanding yet gentle. "Today will show what they have truly learned," she said. "Are they ready?" Curran looked at the 5 daughters standing behind him, their eyes bright and attentive. Each one carried a mixture of excitement and nervousness. "They are ready to try," he replied. "And if they fail, it will still be a lesson. Growth comes from experience, not perfection." The challenge awaited in the city's lower districts. A section of Lithuria's energy grid, powered by a combination of natural elements and advanced technology, was malfunctioning. The problem was complex, interconnected systems, unpredictable patterns, and potential consequences for the citizens. It was the perfect opportunity for the daughters to apply everything they had learned. As they arrived at the site, the daughters' eyes widened. Streams of glowing energy flowed through translucent channels, some erratic, some fading. Structures hummed and small mechanical monitors blinked rapidly. Curran pointed to the main control panel. "Observe first," he said. "Do not rush. Watch the patterns, notice the anomalies, and discuss solutions before acting." The daughters gathered around the panel. At first, they hesitated, unsure how to begin. One of the older daughters finally spoke. "The channels are unstable, the flow is uneven. But we have not considered the environment around them, temperature changes, pressure variations, or the effect of nearby plants." Curran nodded encouragingly. "Exactly. Observation comes first. Understanding the system completely before making changes is crucial." They worked in pairs, analyzing the energy streams, noting irregularities, and testing small adjustments carefully. Curran observed, guiding only when necessary, reminding them that mistakes were not failures but opportunities to learn. Slowly, the daughters began to understand the system's patterns. They predicted how changes in one part would affect others, and their confidence grew. Hours passed. Sweat, or the alien equivalent, a faint shimmer across their skin, glistened as they concentrated. They made small modifications, tested outcomes, discussed new ideas, and adapted their strategies. Curran could see their human-inspired ingenuity in action, creative solutions, collaboration, and a willingness to experiment. At one point, the youngest daughter suggested redirecting energy from a secondary channel to stabilize the main flow. The others were hesitant. "It could be dangerous," said one. "Or it could work," replied another. "We won't know unless we try carefully." Curran smiled. "Trust each other, combine observation with action. This is what humans call calculated risk. You have learned this well." They adjusted the channels cautiously. Energy flowed more evenly, humming with steady strength. The structures stabilized, lights shone steadily, and monitors blinked in harmony. A quiet cheer escaped the daughters. They had succeeded. Governor Zyra arrived moments later, observing the results with a mixture of pride and relief. "You have done exceptionally well," she said. "Not because you followed instructions perfectly, but because you thought, adapted, and worked together. This is what leadership requires." The daughters beamed. Curran stepped forward, placing a hand on the youngest daughter's shoulder. "You have learned more than technical skills. You have learned confidence, creativity, and teamwork. These are qualities that will guide you for the rest of your lives." Zyra's eyes softened. "I doubted whether my daughters could handle such challenges. Today they have proven themselves, not just to me but to the world. And you, Curran, have shown that humans have wisdom beyond what I imagined. You have been more than a teacher. You have been a guide." Curran bowed slightly. "They taught me as much as I taught them." Learning is never one way. Cooperation and curiosity can change the world, human or alien. The daughters gathered around him, their faces glowing with pride and excitement. For the first time, they understood that their culture's rules were not limitations, but frameworks to build upon. They had learned to see opportunities where others saw obstacles, to trust themselves and each other, and to embrace uncertainty with courage. That evening, back in the palace, Curran reflected on the day. The city below shimmered with soft light, the energy grid humming steadily, the citizens unaware of the potential disaster that had been prevented. The daughters were discussing ideas among themselves, excitedly planning new experiments, and exploring concepts that even Curran had not suggested. He realized then that the greatest lesson he could give them had not been about mechanics or problem-solving. It was about mindset. Humans were not superior because of technology or strength. They thrived because of their curiosity, adaptability, and resilience. That mindset had ignited something remarkable in the daughters. Over the next days, Curran continued mentoring the daughters, each challenge more complex than the last. They learned to analyze ecological systems, design solutions for city planning, and even develop diplomatic strategies for interspecies negotiations. The daughters' confidence grew daily. Curran noticed subtle changes. They questioned assumptions respectfully, proposed innovative ideas, and took responsibility for outcomes. One evening, Governor Zaira invited Curran to her chambers. "You have done more than teach," she said. "You have inspired my daughters. Their minds are freer, their spirits stronger, and their courage has grown. How can I ever thank you?" Curran smiled gently. "You have given me the greatest gift, a chance to share human perspective. Watching them grow is reward enough. And your daughters are remarkable. They will achieve things we cannot yet imagine." Zaira nodded. "They will, thanks to you. Perhaps humans and Lithurians can learn from each other more than I realized. You have shown that collaboration can bring the best in both species." Curran's heart swelled with hope. For the first time, he saw a future where humans were not just visitors in alien worlds, but partners, teachers, and innovators. His own perspective had changed as well. Seeing how culture, intelligence, and courage could merge across species inspired him to believe in limitless possibilities. The daughters approached Curran that night, faces bright. "We want to continue learning," one said. "There is so much to explore. We want to test new ideas, build new systems, and even challenge old rules." Curran laughed softly. "That is exactly what I hoped you would say. Growth is endless. There is always more to learn, and your curiosity will guide you. But remember, true strength comes not from knowing everything, but from asking questions, listening, and working together." Over the following weeks, Curran and the daughters embarked on increasingly ambitious projects. They designed systems that harmonized alien technology with human methods, created plans for environmental stability across the city, and even proposed experiments to understand the mysteries of Lithuria's floating gardens. Each success reinforced the lessons of curiosity, observation, and courage. Governor Zaira watched silently, amazed by the transformation. Her daughters, once confined by tradition, had become thinkers, innovators, and leaders. They had grown confident in themselves and in their ability to face challenges creatively. Curran's guidance had shown them that human ingenuity could complement alien wisdom in ways no one had imagined. One evening, as the sun set across Lithuria, Curran stood with the daughters on the palace balcony. The city below glowed with life, its systems humming in balance. The daughters' laughter and discussion filled the air, ideas flowing freely between them. Curran realized that this moment was the culmination of weeks of learning, teaching, and growing together. "You have come far," Curran said softly. "Not because I taught you everything, but because you chose to learn, to explore, and to challenge yourselves. That is the essence of intelligence and courage." The daughters smiled, and the youngest spoke. "We have learned that mistakes are not failures, and curiosity is more powerful than fear. Thank you for showing us the human way." Curran felt a surge of pride and hope. Humans were not just survivors. They were thinkers, innovators, and bridges to understanding. And here, on a distant world, he had seen that human perspective could ignite brilliance in others, inspire change, and create new possibilities for cooperation across worlds. As night fell over Lithuria, the city sparkled like a sea of stars. Curran looked out, knowing that the lessons of today would guide the daughters for years to come. Their minds were free, their courage strengthened, and the future was brighter because they had dared to think differently. He realized then that this was the true power of humanity, not strength, not technology, but the courage to imagine, adapt, and inspire. And in that understanding, Curran knew that both humans and Lithurians had much to gain from each other, and together they could achieve extraordinary things.